Hello and a warm welcome to the show. Today I am joined by Nicolas Grospierre, an award-winning Swiss photographer and visual artist who has lived and worked in Poland for more than 25 years. His work explores the relationship between space, history and social ideas, and he has become one of the most important voices in contemporary photography. Today we'll discuss Nicolas' work from architecture to heliograms, currently on view at the Royal Łazienki Museum here in Warsaw and in the National Museum in Gdańsk. Hello and welcome, sir. Delighted to have you with us.
Hello.
You studied political science and sociology as well as economics before turning to photography. So what made you do so?
Well, I did study at the London School of Economics and at Sciences Po in Paris. But after a few years working in a corporate as a job, I figured that I wanted to do something else. But that was already 25 years ago. And ever since I decided to switch, and I was always interested in photography. And at some point I just decided I would, stop being an executive and become a photographer.
And you have a special focus on architecture. So what can architecture tell us about, modern society?
Well, architecture is the embodiment of ideas. Broadly speaking, of course, its form and its function, but it tells about the way society projects itself in the present moment and into the future. And it is in this sense that I was really interested in architecture, especially modernist architecture, post-war modernism, which embodied this idea of progress, of belief that tomorrow will be better than yesterday. Well, unfortunately, we know now that these ideas of progress are a bit illusory, but still, the building remains. They are very interesting formally, and as far as their function, they have not stopped. So I've been photographing this for the last 20 years.
And the title of your exhibition in Gdańsk is Perma-Crisis, Architecture as a Record of Social Ideas. So in our current era of overlapping crises, what can architecture teach us about collective hope?
Well, this exhibition is really a sort of small kind of retrospective about various works. And as I was saying, I was always fascinated by architecture as this embodiment of ideas. And the perma-crisis is this idea that crisis something is supposed to be exceptional. The permanent crisis is something which is contradictory in terms, and yet this is the place we are now as a society. And I look back at works that I've been doing for the last 20 years with some, I suppose, some distance. And my take is that actually modernism is to be found as sort of not so much culprit responsible for the situation we are now, and because of the promises that architecture could give us, and the promises of abundance and prosperity, which in fact were difficult to obtain.
Your photographs reveal similarities between buildings created at different times under different social and political systems. So what can they tell us about universality?
Well, I suppose.
And how come they're so similar?
Because we tend to forget that before the Second World War, the kind of services that we found in buildings nowadays, such as water, electricity, gas, were not that common, and that modernism was a program in which this idea of bringing the basic luxury, what we consider things normal, were in fact luxuries back then, and we can't imagine really modern life without all these things. So. It's a bit of an attempt to show the ambition of this program, and also its generosity in terms of buildings which are created not in order to make profit, but in order to deliver better living standards to the general public. And that was the main goal, and I think that on the whole it's been achieved. Now is the question, what do we do with all these buildings?
Let's talk about structures that stand in a stark contrast to modernist buildings, and I'm talking about castles, because we recently spoke to Kuba Snopek, the curator of Castleness, and your photographs are a part of this exhibition. So how was working on this project?
Well, Kuba indeed approached me and asked me if I would be interested to photograph castles, and he thought I would say no, because I'm really used to photographing buildings from the last 50 years and not the last 500 years. But no, for me it was a really interesting experiment. Well, because I had to think a bit the way I wanted to photograph to convey the idea of these specific buildings. But actually it doesn't change much. I mean, my approach to architecture is to try to show the building in one photograph, which is a bit of also a sort of contradiction, because architecture is three-dimensional. So in order to see it, you really need to go around it to explore it. One photograph per building is illusory. But it's also the thing that I liked about this, because these castles that Kuba asked me to photograph, in fact, they are not, well, they are real in the sense that they are built, but they are not real castles in the sense that they've been most of the times reconstructed and sometimes even built from scratch, in places where there was nothing. So it's really a game with the idea of representation. What do we show? Do we show the illusion of a castle, or do we show through photography the illusion of a castle? And that was the game that I played with him.
And over the last 20 plus years, you photographed a number of buildings. So do you have your favorite one, or perhaps you would like to share with us one that challenged you the most as a photographer?
I mean, there's so many buildings that I've photographed that I couldn't pinpoint one in particular. I mean, I guess that when it comes to modernism, if I had to choose one architect, that would be either Le Corbusier or Oscar Niemeyer. So Le Corbusier was really the founder of modernism in France, and then his style spread over the world. And then Niemeyer was in a way the continuator, but under the tropics, but because of the boldness of his designs, which were really out of this world.
So let's turn to heliograms now, if we may.
Sure. Because
Sunlight is the co-author of these images. Could you explain to our viewers what are heliograms?
Well, a heliogram is, poetically speaking, a sun recording. That is, I mount velvet on stretchers, and then I place them in boxes, and over these boxes there are a certain number of templates, and I leave these boxes for 4 or 5 months during spring and summer. And when I take out the templates, the sun simply has erased some part of the velvet, and there are the traces of the sun, which is materially inscribed in the velvet. So this is a heliogram, technically speaking. So these are abstract shapes burnt by the sun on velvet.
This is a very unique form. How did you sort of come up with this?
Well, I was just walking some 10 years ago in the street, and there was this vitrine, this exhibition sort of cabinet where there used to be announcements, like municipal announcements, and it was mounted with felt. And so you would see normally pieces of paper on felt, and that was the day when all the pieces of paper had been taken out, and it looked like a composition, like an abstract geometric composition, because where the papers were, well, the sun didn't burn the felt, and I thought that it was really interesting, because it looked like at the same something very abstract, but also a kind of very, very primitive photography or photographic process, without camera, without lens, without objective, without paper, without negative. And so that's my sort of relation to photography.
That is very interesting. And the heliograms installed in the Solomon Room, they took place of artworks that were lost during World War II. So did that influence how you went about creating this exhibition?
Well, so in fact, yes, there were Bacciarelli paintings that were destroyed during the Second World War, and ever since the frames, the gilded frames, were empty. And Marianna Otmatnowska, the director of Łazienki Museum, invited me to fill them with heliograms, as I proposed to her this project. And I thought it was really challenging, but also an incredible chance that I have to measure myself with such a huge canvas, because it was 3.5 by 4.5 meters. And so, but also we came up with this idea because of the size, but also more essentially, what we did is that we created these works in the gardens of the Łazienki Museum, so that for 4 to 5 months, the visitors of the garden would walk around or walk next to these huge boxes where the heliograms were being cooked in a way. And then in September we unpacked them and mounted them exactly so that they would fit these gilded frames. So the shape and the format was dictated by the frames, but also I think that this castle, this palace, is very much in the Enlightenment movement of architecture and philosophy. And to me, because it relates with the sun, I think that there's a strong connection.
Looking into the future, can you share with us some of your future projects, or perhaps something that you're currently working on?
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm opening together with a whole lot of other artists, and not personally, but I'm taking part in Manifest, which is this biennial, which takes place in the Ruhr region. It's a nomadic biennial. It's created by Anna Rottenberger and Krzysztof Kościuszczuk. It's a big thing, and I'm showing their photographs, which I did in the Ruhr Valley. And well, that's coming up in the next few days, actually.
That is very exciting. And I must ask you before we go, because you've been living in Poland for 20 plus years now, how do you find the artistic environment here in the country, and sort of what made you stay?
Well, I think it's always been very vibrant, but what strikes me is that I feel that Poland is the pulse of Europe. Poland is the most, I think, dynamic, and Warsaw in particular, city in Europe. I have to say, everybody that comes to visit, from abroad, they're all struck. And when I step back a little bit, when I visit the rest of Europe, Western Europe, it seems to be a bit sluggish. Whereas here, you feel the dynamic.
Nicolas Grospierre, thank you so much for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Pulse of Culture. Please stay tuned for more here on TV.